everybody, this is Vips. Welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be slightly different as I really wanted to start this project but didn't feel like talking, so decided to voice over the entire project. Different from my usual style, but let me know how you like it. I'm creating a bag in this video. I'd seen some cute crossbody bags online and the outline of mine is inspired by those. I'll leave links in the description. The footage you're currently seeing is me assembling the lining of the bag in much the same way as I'll be assembling the main bag. I'll give a lot more details on the construction of that as we go along, but I wanted to take the time to explain the background of this project. I had run into an issue when taking my child to daycare. He sits behind me on my bike, which means I can't wear a backpack without smushing him, but I still need to be able to transport clothes and a water bottle for him. Another slight issue I'd been facing was needing different sizes. Some days I would be carrying a lot in the bag, other times just the water bottle, so I really wanted a size adjustable design. Do you know the kind of hiking pants that have legs that can zip on and off, or suitcases that can zip larger and smaller? I went with that idea and have created a somewhat expandable bag. As you'll see later, there's a zipper around the middle and then an additional piece of fabric that connects the two halves, allowing the bag to fold out completely or take up less space. To make the insides work, I simply made the lining the size of the fully expanded bag. The size difference isn't that big that it makes the lining too bulky when compressed down, and it got the job done. I love being able to do this sort of creative problem solving with everyday items, especially when I can sew myself a solution. In terms of fabric, I'm using leftovers from my wedding actually. The screen with the white leaves was used as table runners, and the lining is actually leftover dress fabric. Both are some form of polyester and rather sturdy, so they worked out well for this project. And I have a ton of scraps that I want to use somehow, so this was at least a head start on that. Here I am roughly outlining one half of the main bag piece with pins before folding the fabric in half and cutting it out. Next, I'm using this piece as a guide to cut the top pieces, where I will insert a zipper as a closure for the main bag compartment. These are just two rectangles of fabric. Then I used the width of the zipper piece to eyeball the pieces that will lead from the bag to the strap. I cut 4 of these in total. The next piece is the bottom of the bag. I'm using my main bag piece again as a guide, checking my bottom will be long enough to match it and matching the width at the ends with the connecting pieces I just cut before. I also cut out strap pieces, just 2 long rectangles. step was to decide where I wanted the expandable portion of the bag to go. I used one of the strap pieces as a guide to have a somewhat straight edge to cut against, lined it up on the main body of the bag where I felt like it would work, and split my main body into 2 pieces. I also had to split the bottom of the bag along the same line, so I used the cut main body as a guide and split my bottom section into 3 pieces. I planned this out roughly on paper beforehand. I'll insert a picture, and have here measured the circumference I've gotten with the design so I know what length zipper I'll need to buy to be able to connect it all back together again. Here comes the expansion piece. I was worried about bulk when the bag was compressed, so decided to create this piece in the lining fabric as it's a lot thinner than the main bag fabric and would be able to tuck away nicely. I just laid it under the split main bag pieces and cut out a rough shape that could fill in the gap. I probably could have made this piece wider and have a bigger bag, but decided to err on the side of caution and didn't make it too wide. This was filmed back in the summer, by the way, if that isn't evident from me wearing shorts. Time to set up my machine and get stitching. My first order of business was closing the top piece where I wanted to insert a zipper. This is a method my grandmother taught me where you baste together the pieces before opening up the seam, laying the zipper in place and essentially top stitching it down before opening up the basting stitches to reveal a mostly concealed zipper. It had been a while since I did this, so I completely forgot to increase the seam allowance, which makes this technique a lot easier. I believe I went back and hand stitched in a few places later where I hadn't quite caught the seam. Next up, I'm attaching the top of the main bag piece to the zipper piece I just sewed. Everything is sewed right sides together with no additional seam finishings since I'm fully lining the bag. I cleaned up some of the edges here since I didn't base this off of a pattern but just eyeballed everything. I did have some smoothing out to do. Next, I'm attaching the top parts of the bottom. Hopefully the video provides enough context for that stupid sentence. I'm leaving the very top unattached since I have a piece I want to add here later to add the straps to. I'm just sewing down the sides. are the strap attachment pieces I just mentioned, which I'm sewing together right sides together. Again, only along the sides, leaving the top and bottom open. I then flipped them and sandwiched them in the bag opening and sewed across, fixing them in place. For my next step, I assembled the bottom of the main bag layer, matching my bottom piece up with the two small bag pieces I had previously cut off. Something was off here in terms of sizes of the three pieces, but I just made sure to line things up the best I could and then finagled everything into place. This is definitely not precision sewing, but making things work as you go along. I did this day was assemble the strap. I had cut one side of the strap in two sections to conserve fabric, so I started off by piecing those and then seaming the strap right sides together and turning it over like a long tube. I left a gap in the middle to be able to turn it easier, though the two ends are also open, but I didn't feel like fiddling around with it that much. Going back to the lining, I knew I wanted to add some internal pockets, so I knew where my keys, phone, wallet were in the bag. So I created this honestly very janky internal pocket. When I was planning this project, I had considered adding all kinds of zipper pockets internally and externally, but there ended up being a lot of zippers already, so I opted for a simpler solution. Not quite as elegant, but less work and still functional. I'm hemming the top and bottom of my internal pocket, which is a scrap piece of fabric cut on a curve, which is why the hem looks rather puckered. Then I top stitched it in place, adding seams down the length to divide it into three sections, as you'll see. Here you can see I've added my phone to the pocket, so I know where to stitch it so it'll fit, and then my wallet. This leaves a space in the middle for my keys. Off camera, I added the lining to the top zipper band, and I'm now going to work on the zipper that allows for the bag to expand or collapse as necessary. Ideally, I would have gotten one long zipper, but my local shop didn't have any that were long enough, so I got two shorter ones instead that zip from the same place on one side of the bag. Inserting them was a bit tricky, and I ended up redoing parts of it, but managed to get it functional in the end. I struggled so much getting the zipper head past my presser foot for some reason. It did not want to budge. And immediately after that, my needle decided to come undone. So not my best sewing experience. Luckily, I could just refasten the needle and finally get going with the zipper. When the two zippers were attached to the top of the bag, I needed to attach the bottom of the main body to the zippers. This consisted of a bunch of pinning and then back to the machine. I'm flipping everything right sides out to see how this worked out. I had missed some fabric in one corner, so I went back in and fixed this. Also, apparently I'd already added the strap to the bag at this point, or at least one end of it. I just fed my strap through the opening I'd left for it, turning down the seam allowance and top stitching it in place. I'll show in a little bit how I actually finished the strap. So the final piece I need to add is the extension piece that goes between the zippers. I had cut the strip in the lining fabric to reduce bulk, and also to add a fun contrast when the bag is unzipped. Figuring out how to pin it was hard. This is making my brain hurt. I pinned it in place, but had a hard time lining up the two sides equally, so on my first attempt there was a lot of warping on the extension piece. Luckily I was able to unpick, reposition it, and sew it again. Another day working on this bag. To make the strap adjustable, which was my intention, but I've never actually adjusted it, I found a belt buckle in my stash, which I'm adding to one end of the bag, as seen here. I finished off the loose end of the strap by top stitching it shut. After trying the bag on and determining a good enough length for the strap, I made a hole in it with my awl to fit the buckle through. I did have to re-pierce the hole multiple times as the fabric didn't want to separate. It did end up creating quite a tight fit, but that's probably good for the stability of the strap. My intention was to make multiple holes for that adjustability, but this took a while and I was just about over this project at this point, so one hole was made and one hole remains to this day. So there you have my bag making adventures. I've used this bag a ton. It really worked out for me cycling with my kid and using this so I don't squish him. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time. Hi.